everybody, and you're very welcome to the latest Cuppaculture from the Southtippartspodcast here at the Arts Centre in Clonmel. This week, Helena and I were delighted to have a chat with Tom Creed, opera and theatre director, about his involvement in the national campaign for the arts and their Save the Arts campaign. Through their years of hard work, the NCFA was actually established in 2009. They have lobbied on behalf of the arts in Ireland and in recent weeks have secured an unprecedented commitment from the government to help save the arts. We began by asking Tom about the recent announcements.
I know you're really busy in general anyway, Tom, but I know with your involvement with National Campaign for the Arts, it's been going on for quite some time and there's been a lot of lobbying. But it really seems that in the last week, just like so much has happened that it's almost like all that work that I know the work isn't done yet, but there's been a lot of great leaps, it seems, in the last 7 days.
For sure. And I mean, it's been a kind of roller coaster, actually, because I guess the week started with the publication of the draft programme for government, which kind of on first reading, I think a lot of people in the arts community were a little bit disappointed with. I think it felt like, obviously there is a commitment in there to fund the arts and there's, initiatives around community arts and amateur arts. But I think there were some things which were a little bit concerning. I think in other sectors, there are very clear timelines and financial commitments laid down, and those weren't there for the arts. And, it was a little bit concerning that there was no mention of Culture Ireland and only one mention of the Arts Council. But actually, I mean, we've been reassured subsequently that it's one of the most developed arts policies in a programme for government that there has actually ever been. Usually there's almost no mention of the arts at all, other than just like one line about supporting the arts. So, I think the engagement with parties over the last couple of months has been really positive. I guess the process getting to here, I guess since the pandemic hit, we, spent a lot of time consulting with independent practitioners, artists and arts workers and arts organisations, also resource organisations representing all of the art forms and all of the various kind of subsectors across the sector, and then put together a 13-point action plan, which we put to government. We briefed all the political parties online. Our kind of local coordinators in all the constituencies all over Ireland have been meeting TDs. We were really, I guess, we're able to take advantage of the fact that there's not a lot of advertising for culture out there. So RTE and the Irish Times were able to support us with TV and print advertising to really get the word out with our hashtag Save the Arts campaign. And then on Tuesday, I guess, we were really heartened where the government came out and announced that they would meet the first of 13 points in NCFA's plan, which was an immediate €20 million investment in the Arts Council to support artists and arts workers and arts organisations through the rest of 2020. And it's a really big deal. It's certainly not not everything that's necessary. I think there's still an urgent need to confirm that the pandemic unemployment payment and the COVID wage subsidy scheme will continue until the sector gets back to full capacity, not just until the doors are allowed open by the rules, but actually until people are able to rehearse, until people are able to sell tickets to capacity. And that may be a little bit off, so I mean, that's urgent. And I think there's also an urgent need for capital support for venues in particular to get themselves COVID ready in terms of how they work, in terms of how they bring the public into the venues.
And I think it was really positive to see that, because for anyone who deals with funding for the arts in any capacity, it's always a case of you ask for 10, you maybe get 8, and there's always a sense of you get a little bit less than what you ask for, generally speaking, kind of a thing. So it was I just thought it was really great to see them actually go, here you go, we know you need this, and we're really interested in making sure that the arts are supported as much as we can, and here's what you asked for. Now, there's also the issue of kind of going forward, but it was great to see the notion of capital funding being brought up for venues who will have a massive hit. And I think also I thought was interesting was the commitment to maybe put some money into allowing festivals and venues and practitioners get grants to try and maybe up their digital content or their digital expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a real credit to Maureen Kennelly, the new director of the Arts Council, and Kevin Rafter, who's recently arrived as chair of the Arts Council. They're really listening to the sector. And I think the expert advisory panel that they put together, which was also meeting over the last couple of weeks, which involved a range of stakeholders in terms of practitioners, producers, medical experts, Finch O'Toole, the journalist, was on the panel. And I think what was great was at the same time that NCFA were communicating our 13 points, the Arts Council's expert advisory group were also going through the same issues, and NCFA was represented by the chair, Angela Dorgan, who really brought everything that we had gathered from across the sector. And so the Arts Council's asks were really aligned with those of NCFA.
Yeah, that was brilliant. I thought that was great. It really showed unity,
Yeah,
for sure. And of course, we're not out of these strange days yet by any means. And as well as the things that we've talked about, there are other burning issues. I think there are issues around funding for next year. It's great to see in the report that the Arts Council are calling for a €30 million stimulus package next year, so that they can continue to fund organizations at that level and to really make sure that we're able to get out of this. Because I think I don't know if you saw the employment and economic impact assessment that Ernst & Young.
Yeah, that was quite shocking, some of the figures, Tom.
I think, but this idea that the recession in the arts sector in 2020 will be between 34.6% and 42% compared to 11% in the rest of the economy. So like between 3 and 4 times the level of recession. And that's going to cost, it's estimated, between 250 million and 300 million in GDP in terms of the added value that the arts and arts organizations are able to make to public investment. So I think actually I can imagine government looking at that and thinking an investment of 20 million this year and 30 million next year is a small, it's about 10% of the possible loss in GDP.
I think myself and Emer were talking before as well, Tom, about how the arts, the problem often has been with the arts in trying to communicate to government, in that there's this, it's almost like qualitative versus quantitative, it's always been an issue. How do you measure what the arts does in capacity, except for maybe numbers of bodies affected? How do you actually measure the value? And I thought it was really good that the report yesterday from the Arts Council had those Ernst Young figures that really showed the economic impact in just cold hard figures, which is what the government want to see, because that's what they're going to respond to.
Absolutely. And but also the idea, that in the same report that Dr. Gabriel Scally writes about the arts and health.
That was brilliant.
And this quote, there can be no better time to recognise that the arts are not some optional time of entertainment or pleasant societal indulgence, but an essential and potentially restorative part of human consciousness and social being. And that's not even to mention the economic value of the arts. In terms of the employment that it provides to at least 23,000 workers in the sector, and all of the activity that happens around the arts. And I guess it's something that we've known for a while, and maybe we're getting a little bit better at communicating it. But so there's still a lot to do for next year. There's work to be done in terms of the local authorities also, to make sure that local authority arts investment is ring fenced, because at the moment it's discretionary. It's up to each local authority how much they spend on the arts and how they spend it. And I think there's the partnership between local authorities and the Arts Council can be really strong. But I think there's more work to be done there. I think there's a lot of issues around insurance. The circus sector in particular is has been really brought to its knees by this. But in general, there's a lot of work to be done on insurance. I think there are tax reforms that I think can be looked at. I think culture is VAT on culture is as a luxury, and it would be interesting to see if VAT rates on the arts were reduced in terms of the money we spend on hiring equipment and space and labour. Actually, that doesn't need the government to invest additional funds.
That's just a change in approach in policy.
And that would be so good in terms of accessibility to a broader range of people as well, that cash is tight with everybody at the moment for obvious reasons, but that'd be
absolutely. And also in terms of, because of course there are still people around who have some money as well. And to think, whether we could look back to the impact that when Michael D. Higgins brought in Section 481 in terms of the investment in the film industry, and tax breaks for investment in the film industry, the impact that could potentially have if that could expand it across the arts sector in terms of philanthropy, in terms of individual giving, in terms of commercial investment. So there's still a lot to do, and I guess the next couple of weeks, the key things that we need to see now are, confirmation about what's going to happen with the pandemic unemployment payment and the wage subsidy scheme. and progress on the capital supports for venues and arts organisations. And then, the question of how the arts will be represented at cabinet. Will there be a full ministry? Obviously, a few years ago, the Fine Gael government proposed amalgamating the department into, as one element of another department. And there was a big pushback from the arts sector, and they changed their mind. It remains to be seen whether that might happen again, or whether, the arts could be put in with things like media or tourism or sport.
I think going in with sport is always really just, it's rough.
It's rough. But then on the other hand, I think there's always the sense that the Department of the Arts is the poor relation at cabinet. And, I think there's, I don't think it's all negative to imagine the arts being in a department that has more weight. I think it remains to be seen. Obviously, we have to wait and see if the political parties pass the programme for government.
Yeah, of course.
We could be, of course, be heading into another general election, but
that's something that I think we really want to put out to people is, for anyone, whether they be an artist or somebody who just enjoys the arts and kind of, understands the value of it and wants to support the campaign, and how could they involve, Tom, or how can they help?
Yeah, well, so I guess the first thing is you can go to the National Campaign for the Arts website, which is ncfa.ie, and there's a lot of resources there that you can link to from the front page. There's kind of examples of letters that you can write to your TDs or local representatives. There's our TV ad, which people can share on their social media. And other resources there, links to our 13-point plan, so people can have a read of that. And I think, what's really important about this, kind of, I say, is that it's really important that our public representatives hear not only from artists and arts workers, but actually from, the millions of people who engage with the arts every day in Ireland, that the arts are important to them. And, we know that the arts are very thrifty, that the arts, public funding allows the arts to really make a lot happen and to generate a lot of activity and a lot of other income, and the role that, the arts and culture plays in communities. And, for a very small investment, the kind of investment that you wouldn't even notice in the budget of another department, it can make such a difference to people's well-being, to education, to innovation, to our communities, to our identity, to our image abroad. And so, for people who don't work in the arts, but who go to dance classes, or who like attending their art house cinema, or who read the latest novels, or who, participate in the local drama society or musical society, or play in an orchestra or sing in a choir, if they have an opportunity to meet their politicians, or they can write to them or email them and let them know that the arts are important to them, and that the arts are something that they will be thinking about when they're voting at the next election. And this together, we know that more people buy tickets for arts events in Ireland than do for the GAA championship matches.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, really? That's amazing.
That really is an amazing statistic, isn't it? I wouldn't have believed that at all.
In the UK, just it's interesting on that, there was a statistic came out recently from our colleagues in the UK. More people go to the theatre in the UK than go to the Premier League matches.
That is impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive. But it doesn't get half the press, which is...
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I think there's another conversation to be had about, where's the daily arts and culture bulletin?
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up then, as Emer said that, is that seemed to have come up as well a little bit in the last maybe 6 weeks, that idea of, well, what about a little, arts segment or culture segment in the daily news? Where is that for the arts and culture? But again, that's something, I suppose, that could be done over time, and maybe somebody would take it on. But
that doesn't even have to be anything that costs a lot of money. There's so many people throughout the country that could make those reports. Those little reports could be made in a matter of minutes, and it's just a chance to have them aired, isn't it?
And we know that because because they've been able to report on NCFA's activity and on the situation of the arts during the pandemic. But there's a great piece about this on the RTE Brainstorm website. It was a piece from the 14th of May by Miriam Houghton from NUI Galway. The headline is it time for a daily arts report on the news?
Yes, that, yeah.
And people can look that up. But I think it's it's really great, and the impact that could make just in terms of reminding people that actually what the arts are, and the arts is not just things that you don't understand or things that are for somebody else, but the range of that's here. And it was made me laugh, but also really made me think during the week when the programme for government was announced. Olga Barry, who's the brilliant director of Kilkenny Arts Festival, she wrote a series of tweets where she took the description of how Ireland would invest in sport in terms of like elite performance and like high performance around the world. And you sort of think like, actually, like we're Olympic athletes at the art, you know, like the thing that we're brilliant at is the arts. And, you know, for a small investment here, and also of course in Culture Ireland, this extraordinary kind of wealth of Irish culture around the world, you know, like we win the Olympics at the art more than we do at the sports. And to really think about, you know, that as a priority going forward, you know, as well as the kind of inspiration and hope and consolation and comfort that that people, you know, that millions of people take from all kinds of artistic experience in Ireland every day.
Would you say, Tom, that that's part of the success of the recent campaign, at least, that people have begun to realise, oh God, like you don't know what you've got till it's gone? People who aren't involved in the arts sector.
Well, I think that was, you know, I mean, our TV ad campaign that we rolled out, you know, which we debuted on RTE on an ad break during the finale of Normal People.
Great timing, yeah.
You know, which was a brilliant example of, you know, an adaptation of a novel by a young novelist who had been supported by Arts Council bursaries, with 9 actors who had studied at the Lear Academy, you know, with a director who had started working in short films, with the support of Screen Ireland. And, you know, the idea that sort of without Irish literature and without Irish theatre, you wouldn't have Normal People. And so you know, the thrust of that campaign was to go, you know, if it wasn't for the arts, you wouldn't have the books that you're reading, you wouldn't have the music that you're listening to, you wouldn't have the TV that you're watching. And, you know, and I hope that, you know, that's getting across. And, you know, I think as people who work in the arts, I think we know why we do it. We, you know, we have a clear sense of our values, but kind of getting clearer at communicating those and getting our allies and our audiences to communicate them with us, I think is the way to keep it on the agenda.
That's the thing about the grassroots and kind of like having the people who enjoy and use the arts and partake in the arts to, you know, write to their local TD or to in some way voice their support, because the more voices they are there, then the better the response will be, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like the equivalent of the like Ring Your Granny campaign during the marriage equality referendum. Or all of those brave women who, you know, told their stories during the referendum on the 8th Amendment. And, you know, also we're a nation of storytellers. That's in a way our national sport is storytelling. And so for us to tell the stories about why the arts are important to us, and to continue to tell stories that engage with people and touch people and provoke people and make people question themselves and the world around them, so that we're all in this together, you know, that the arts are not something that's separate from society. The arts are something that really has been, you know, at the heart of society ever since people rubbed sticks together to make fire and sat around it and passed the time in the evening. And in a way, you know, we're just doing a slightly more high-tech version of that now.
Zoom is the new fire pit. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks for your
Great,
time.
Tom, and best of luck with everything with National Youth Theatre.
Thanks a million. Mind yourself.
We can each play our part in amplifying the NCFA's message by visiting www.ncfa.ie and informing ourselves about the things we can do to help, and we'd encourage all our listeners to do that. If you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, the email address is southtippartspodcast@gmail.com, and we'd be delighted to hear from you. Thanks to Tom and Helena for joining me again this week, and we'll speak to you all next time.